Hey, how's it going, guys? Just wanted to come and talk to you guys about a topic that I plan on doing a demonstration / configuration on, and that is a private VLANs. This is a topic that I don't necessarily, when I first started learning about it, I couldn't really understand when to implement it. When would it be practical to actually, apply a private VLAN setup. And one of the things that I've been doing at work is I have a cutover that we're working for one of our customers. And essentially what this customer does is they resell data services out to other customers. So essentially everybody knows about the whole cloud, based service platform where, you go to the data center, essentially you do the co-location. And what they pretty much do is they go run out a rack or two, or how many, depending on how much money they got to splurge. They'll go out and rent out these rack cages, go and install $1 million worth of equipment. Essentially the same type of thing that we're used to in our enterprise network. You have your core, your distribution, your access layer. So after they rack up their equipment, what they'll do is they'll go and resell services to customers and have them rack up, have the customers rack their equipment within their data center, within their rack, and the original provider, the person who's reselling, what they'll do is they'll have a router or some kind of a device that will be terminating multiple ISPs. And so say that the customer, in this instance, in this example, we're going to say Dell. Or Dell or IBM. Say that they have services in an MPLS connection or something like that. Right now, this map is representing an internet exchange, and essentially this is kind of summarize what this customer does. But they don't use private VLANs. They actually do their separation at layer 3 opposed to a layer 2 solution. Now, the best thing about the layer 2 solution is that you're able to preserve your layer 3 IP addresses. So essentially, if they were going to do this, the way they do this now is coming into their distribution network, they have multiple /30s sitting for each customer for their WAN connection. Now, that isn't bad, but say that, you want to be able to, they're essentially just using this as a point-to-point. So, to have that sitting at that /30 and having those multiple /30s kind of wastes IP space or in IP addresses. So since broadcasts aren't going to be necessary, and this is, like I said, in a WAN situation, what you can do is you do a /29 right on this primary VLAN of 50, and then you can take VLAN 100 and VLAN 200. It's pretty much slicing VLAN 50 in half, or slicing it in a chunk, and so that these devices at layer 2 can only communicate with itself. These devices can talk to each other at layer 2, but they can use the same, within the same subnet IP between all three VLANs, quote unquote. Now, when we get into the configuration, you'll understand what I mean. But, and say that they have a service, so you have three different type of ports. You have your host port, you have two different type of ports. You have your host port and your promiscuous port. Your host port is going to be the port that's actually associated with one of your two private VLAN types. They're isolated in the community. And the way the community works is that anybody within the same community VLAN can communicate with each other in any promiscuous port, and anybody in an isolated VLAN. So if you're in the same isolated VLAN, you won't be able to talk to each other. You can only talk to the promiscuous port. And in this situation, say that we have IBM and Dell, and they're reselling services, and they need to get access to each other's data center services or whatever the case is. So you have them in the same community VLAN. All three devices are configured within the same /29, but these two devices at layer 2 would be permitted with using the VLAN 100 community VLAN, and this device will never be able to ping this device, even though it's in the same subnet, due to the fact that it's in the isolated VLAN. And like I said, once you see it like this, you're looking at it from a reseller service perspective. Now, each of your primary VLANs can have the /29s, or whatever the range that you get from your ISP, And you can have that sitting on the primary VLANs, and then you can associate the individual community VLANs all within the same subnet and still do what you need to do at a routing basis, totally transparent to what's going on from the private VLAN standpoint. And to add to that, so say that you have a server and you're actually reselling like email services, or you're reselling monitoring services, or whatever the case is. You know, you can have this server still within the same /29 subnet and put him as a promiscuous port within the VLAN 50. And these devices will all be able to talk to that server and pull the resources that it needs. So it adds an underlying layer of security. And at layer 2, you can do your segmentation, so you can preserve your layer 3 addresses. That makes your routing configuration a lot simple, because you're not going to be dealing with multiple /30s, or you don't have to deal with a crap load of different routes from a public perspective. Now, this example wouldn't be possibly practical. I mean, this example would kind of be practical, because from this point, this is completely transparent to the end users. So the end users have no idea that they're all sitting in the same /29, because, like I said, Lockheed will never be able to see traffic or try to be able to ping any of the Dell or IBM devices, because it's in its own isolated VLAN. So at layer 2, you're completely segmented. There's your security right there. And the only way to get into this server is just like a normal VLAN. You got to have a layer 3 device that's bridging it to jump over into the next subnet. So at layer 2, they won't be able to talk, but say that this device had another link into another VLAN, I'd say VLAN 100 or VLAN 1000, and it's in a whole different subnet via a routing going through router 1, depending on where your gateway resides. Then you'll be able to talk to the Dell device at layer 3. But as far as your layer 2 connection from the /29 that you're going to be handing out to your customers, there will be no communication. So yeah, like I said, that's that's one of the cool things about private VLANs that I like. That I actually figured out that is a pretty cool practical use. So the next video I'm gonna do a configuration and a demonstration of how they work. One of the caveats with private VLANs, especially if you do a lot of GNS3 labs and stuff like that. Well, you know what? I take that back, because they're saying that it is supported on VIOS. I haven't configured it yet personally, so I will give that a shot. But as of right now, I've only been able to do it on my 3750 switch. So you're gonna possibly need some hardware. I'm not sure if the 2960 support it, but I know for sure the 3750s do. So or the 3550s as well. So as long as you have those hardware switches, you should be able to do the private VLANs. But if you're using GNS3 like IOU, I actually did try to configure it on the layer 2 interface, and you can do the actual commands, but as far as functionality, it never comes up. It never actually shows the VLAN sites. It always says unknown. That's what I've been running into. So maybe if somebody else knows of a different way to get it working on IOU, let me know, because from what I tried, I can't get it. So that's just a quick overview on private VLANs and where they could be implemented and how they could be implemented. And from a reseller standpoint, if, like I said, you're looking at it at a data center, because that is where the future is going. Go get yourself a rack up your equipment, and then you start reselling services. And one of the cool things about the data center approach with the colo approach, from the standard, say that you have a company that was providing email services. Before, you would actually have to have a circuit. This company would have their headquarters, and they would have the circuit coming in, or multiple circuits coming in, and depending on the location, you don't know what service provider has the fiber related, or you're gonna have to deal with Lex, and there's a lot of other crap that you're gonna have to deal with, where depending on this data center location, you can find a data center that has the ISP with direct connections into the data center, and you could be able to to terminate, to AT&T, CenturyLink, Verizon, the different service providers. So when you start bringing your customers in, depending on what network or what type of communication they have going on, you can then interface with those service providers to be able to give them end-to-end services, through data center deployments. So that's just where I see, it's pretty cool. And this is just one of the tools that you can use to make that service happen if you want to add, layer 2 security or layer 2 segmentation opposed to layer 3. So yeah, that is my overview on private VLANs. Later.